Hello, everyone. I'm going to wait a couple minutes. I see people kind of piling in, so I want to make sure everyone has enough time to join the webinar before we get into the meat of things. So I'm going to ramble here for just a couple minutes and let you know a little bit about what's going on with the Zoom webinar. So if you registered ahead of time, which all of you did, you will get access to a recording afterwards. So keep an eye out for that in the next couple of days. If you have colleagues that registered, but maybe weren't able to attend today, they will also receive a recording. In the Zoom webinar, there is a chat and there is a Q&A. I'm going to try to keep an eye on the chat, but if you have a question for me as we're going through, make sure you send those over to the Q&A because we have a couple eyes on that, and my hope is that I can get to all of those questions and actually answer them during our webinar. So yeah, keep those coming in the Q&A. Welcome, Robin. Yeah, if you want to introduce yourselves in the chat, feel free. We love to see that activity. And I did want to go ahead and mention we're talking about new features today, so very exciting. But as we go through the presentation, you might be wondering how you can provide product feedback. So if you have feature enhancement requests, share that with your hero. Even if you think someone might have already asked for it, we want to hear from you and we want to understand your unique use case. So definitely share that with us. Okay, it looks like we are a couple minutes in. There are still some people joining, so we'll give it maybe another few seconds while people pop in. All right, so we've got quite a few popping into the chat. That's great. Hi, Robin. Hi, Cobra, Jana, Heather, Mark, Sarah, Becca. This is great. Thank you guys for participating. All righty, I am going to switch gears now and go ahead and get started. I think we've given people a couple minutes now. So hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Welcome to Get Ready for Fall with Upswing's new features. I'm Becky Baylor, the Senior Product Manager here at Upswing. Before I move on to the agenda, I just wanted to talk a little bit about Upswing. If you're like me, probably one of the things that really attracted you to Upswing is the mission. The mission is simple but powerful, and that's to help historically marginalized students reach their goals by partnering with institutions like yours to make the student support resources accessible to all. So it's powerful, it's impactful, and everything we do here at Upswing supports that, including our product vision for the Upswing platform. And that is to remove barriers so that every student, no matter where they are or what challenges they face, can access the support they need anytime, anywhere. As we gear up for the fall semester, we know your priority is helping students start strong and stay on track. So today, I'm really excited to show you a few of the ways Upswing can support this goal through expanded coverage, smarter tools, and an even deeper focus on access and equity. So I'm going to go ahead and share the agenda. The first thing we will talk about is a new offering from Upswing, and that is our student workshops. Then I'll share a little bit about some of the new subjects that our Upswing tutors are going to be able to cover in the next semester. I also want to talk a little bit about our Texas Ramp Level 1 certification, which was a big effort on our team's part, and we definitely want to share some of that celebration with you because everyone contributed to this. I'm also going to talk a little bit about how we've been working on inclusive design in the platform. And then I'm going to share some exciting news toward the end about a new tutor search that's coming very soon. So stick around for that because that is going to be very exciting. And then lastly, we'll just wrap up with what's ahead. So a little bit about me. As I mentioned, I'm the Senior Product Manager at Upswing. I lead product strategy, collaborating with our partners, users, and our team to prioritize impactful development. I've been with Upswing for almost 3 years and been in software product management for about 7. Before I worked in software, I actually worked in student support as an English learning specialist in a writing lab at a community college. I also taught college prep English as an adjunct. So the work we do here at Upswing is very dear to my heart. I live in Northern Virginia, just south of DC. I enjoy doing a lot of outdoor activities with my family, like hiking and paddleboarding. And then inside, especially in the colder months, I'm usually knitting or reading a science fiction novel. So let's jump into workshops. The goal with the workshops was to help students build skills for success. And we had been getting a number of requests from schools about hosting these types of workshops. Specific requests included topics like time management, test taking and exam preparation, stress management, study skills, and academic skills such as writing fundamentals. So this spring was the first time we offered this to our partners, and we had 11 participate. Over 300 students registered for 21 workshops, and the reception was very positive. Overall feedback rated workshops a 9 out of 10. I also, excuse me, I also included a few quotes from some of the students that they provided in their feedback surveys. So you can see great presentation, easy to follow. This was very informative. I enjoyed it. I'm not a good writer and the works cited page discourages me. You've provided some invaluable tools and information and also helped calm me down. So that was the spring, and we have taken some of our learnings from the spring for the fall workshops. Based on feedback from both students and administrators, as well as attendance trends, we're offering some new time options. The spring workshops, I believe, were all in the evening. So for the fall, you're going to see a blend of midday and evening sessions. We also added a few new topics. So in the spring, we had some topics that might have been a little overloaded. So we separated study skills and test prep from stress management. So there's a new workshop focused specifically on time and stress management. There's a new workshop on personal finance and budgeting, as well as one on cover letters, networking, and LinkedIn. We're also carrying over some of the most successful workshops from last semester, like APA and MLA citations, research and thesis statements, and resumes. So how can you ensure your students have access to these workshops? There is a way to opt in. So there is a form. I'm going to just show this, but you'll be receiving this very soon as well. There's a form that gives you all of the details about the student workshops, who has access, how the students participate. And then toward the bottom, there is a spot for you to sign off on this. Workshops count as a 30-minute tutoring session. So if a student registers, it's a 30-minute tutoring session. Our team will email students with a link to the workshops where they can register, and anyone who registers will receive the recording and any materials that were provided during the workshop. And then the last thing I wanted to mention about the workshops is how they're promoted to the students. So as I mentioned, our team is going to be emailing the students about the workshops, but we'll also be providing a promotional kit. So you can talk to your hero to find out, to discuss like specific options for presenting these. But as an example, it might be worth sharing these workshops at back to school orientation or some event like that at the beginning of the fall semester. So I'm going to pause before I switch topics to just kind of see if there are any questions about each one before barreling through onto my next. So I'm going to give you a couple of seconds here to pop any questions in the Q&A. Okay. So the next topic on my list is the new subjects that our Upswing tutors can now support. And the goal, of course, is to expand coverage to meet evolving needs. I did want to pop this in here. This isn't necessarily new, but not all of our partners take advantage of this. So we do offer test prep. So if your students are preparing for the LSAT, MCAT, the GRE, and other larger tests like that, we do offer test prep. So in spring, we added a few subjects, criminal justice, and then about 20 new nursing courses. So I don't have the list, but there is a lot more available for those students taking nursing. More are coming in the fall. We have a number of new computer science subjects, such as cybersecurity fundamentals, and health science subjects such as first aid and CPR. We're also improving our course mapping to Upswing subjects. So course mapping is how we match your institution's specific courses to our Upswing tutors subject areas. So we're going through and refining the categories, adding new subjects, and this allows for more accurate mapping and ultimately more opportunities for students to find the appropriate tutor. So there's a lot going on there, and I think that you'll be pleasantly surprised as the semester continues and the course mapping initiative wraps up in the fall. Okay, so we have a question about test prep. I don't have the entire list in front of me, so let me see if I can grab that really quick. But the question is, for test prep, do you offer support for the GED? And find my list. Okay, we do not. However, we do have prep for tests like ACT and SAT. So there may be some similarities, but you can probably talk to your hero to learn a bit more about that. So thank you for your question about that one. All right, moving on. So as I mentioned, we received our Texas Ramp Level 1 certification. So this was a huge initiative. I think many of you are very aware of what this is and the amount of work and time involved in getting prepared for this. But in a nutshell, the Texas Risk and Authorization Management Program, Texas RAMP, provides a standardized approach for security assessment, certification, and continuous monitoring. So it's based on cybersecurity standards from NIST, so federally recognized, accepted, high level of security. And we achieved our certification on September 27th, 2024. So why is it important? Well, vendors like Upswing, providing cloud offerings to state agencies, institutions of higher education, and public community colleges, were required to obtain Texas Ramp Level 1 certification by 2024. So that was something we were required to do in order to continue working with our partners in Texas. So what did we do to accomplish this? There is so much. There's no way I can list it all in one webinar, but we overhauled our infrastructure, we updated our tools and made quite a few improvements. So I'm just going to list a couple here. But we implemented regular vulnerability scans, continuous system monitoring. For those of you who don't log in with single sign-on, we updated the basic login workflow for the application. So you'll notice that for administrators, there's now multi-factor authentication and some stricter password requirements. We also had to change and update some of our tools to make sure they were compliant. So as many of you know, we rolled out a new external reporting dashboard in December. We replaced Sisense with Domo. If you're interested in hearing more about that, there is a webinar on Domo tomorrow. But some of the reasons why we move forward with Domo as an external reporting tool is because of its high level of security and its overall improved user interface. Some of the perks here are you get to control who accesses your data. So there's an administrator at each institution who can create login accounts for other staff. And each partner has their own instance of Domo. So those were just a couple of the security benefits. So how does it benefit you? Well, if you're in Texas, that's pretty straightforward, but this is an overall benefit for everyone. Texas ramp is very similar to state ramp, which covers all states. So you can trust in the security of your data, knowing that we are adhering to these strict and standardized levels of control. So it's just an overall benefit for everyone with that added security. So what does this mean in the future? We will be implementing regular vulnerability scans. We will be implementing continuous system monitoring. And we will participate in regular security assessments and audits from Texas. So this isn't a one and done kind of thing. This is something that is ongoing and continually improving. If you're interested in learning more about our thought process with Texas Ramp, and why we decided to go this route, definitely let us know and we can reach out with some additional details. I will pause here as well to see if anybody has any questions that I can answer about Texas Ramp. All right, moving on. Built for everyone, inclusive design for an equitable experience. So I'm going to talk a bit about some of the work we've been doing to ensure that our platform is accessible for all. And it aligns perfectly with that product vision I shared earlier to remove barriers so that every student, no matter what challenges they face, can access the support they need. So what is it? Well, like I said, digital accessibility ensures everyone can access information. And while compliance is a factor, it's not just about compliance. It's about inclusivity, and it actually improves usability for all. I'm going to show off some of this, and you'll be able to see some of the improvements and how they do actually improve overall usability, not just for specific user groups. So one of the things that you may have realized about designing more inclusively is that when you do something for one user group, you actually end up doing things that are going to be benefiting other user groups. And I think a couple really good examples of this are closed captioning and keyboard operability. So for closed captioning, this is something that was originally intended for the hearing impaired, but all of us use closed captioning at some point or another. It just improves our overall experience. Think of the last time you went to a restaurant or bar and there were TVs everywhere. all of them are using closed captioning, so you can follow what's going on without being able to necessarily hear 20 televisions going off at once. Keyboard operability. Similarly, this is something that was intended for limited mobility. However, this is something I think a lot of us use all the time. It just helps you move through websites and applications so efficiently. I can't think of a time where I have filled out a form and used my mouse anymore. You know, I'm always tabbing through, using the arrows, and it just makes things go so much faster. So why is it important? Well, aside from what I was just explaining and in general, Title II of the ADA, American Disabilities Act, was recently updated for web content and mobile accessibility. So starting April 24th, 2026, all state and local government agencies must ensure that all of their web and mobile content complies with, it's called the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, but there's an acronym, WCAG, level or version 2.1, level AA. So there is a little bit of nuance, and I definitely have a lot of information on this. So if you have questions about this, I can definitely send you links and such. But in general, we know that this regulation is coming to fruition, and our most of our partners are going to be required to be completely accessible by April 24th. Our goal is to make sure we are completely compliant well before that date. So how does this benefit you? Well, this is slightly redundant, but I think this is worth really driving home. We are really focused here on inclusive design. So we're looking at the platform and looking at design choices that may unintentionally be leaving out certain user groups. And then as we're designing solutions to work for a specific user group, we're often benefiting more users than we originally anticipated because we're keeping in mind our entire user base. You'll see this with some of the changes that have occurred with small things like button changes, color changes, and text size. We are also offering multiple ways to engage. So you'll see this as I show off keyboard operability, screen readers, color choices, larger fonts, and general responsiveness. So I'm going to go ahead and pop over to the application, and I'm logged in as a student. A lot of the changes that I'm going to point out are extremely subtle, but they do have an impact. As an example, when looking at this page, the headings and the text size has been increased for all of the cars that you see here. Another thing that is pretty impactful is the keyboard operability. So I'm going to start here at the top and with URL and then hit tab. And I want you to keep an eye on some of the things that are happening on the screen. First off, there is this little tab at the top that says skip to content. Skipping to content would let someone who is using their keyboard or someone who's using a screen reader skip past all of the navigation over here on the left and go straight to the content in the center. So I'm not going to click on that now. I'll click on that in a second, but I am going to go through the navigation so you can see as I tab, the focus moves and you can see, okay, now I'm focused on calendar, now tutoring, now assignment review, and so on and so forth. And then after I hit the last element, the items in the center of the screen are very clearly in focus as well. I can tell that Meet with a Tutor is selected. Okay, so I wanted to go ahead and show you what happens when I click Skip to Content. I'll hit enter, and this time when I hit tab, instead of going through the nav bar, I'm going to go straight into the center. So that is one thing that is being worked on, and you should see that all throughout the application now. There's also a very clear hierarchy for screen readers, and this is something that you don't see visually, but there's a clear hierarchy now with heading levels and such. So it makes it very easy for the screen reader to determine where to go next. I want to go to the tutoring page next because I think here you can see some of the other changes. It's not overwhelming. Like I said, it's kind of subtle, but on this page, again, text size was increased. And one of the things throughout the platform that we saw was that our contrast ratio of our previous colors didn't meet the minimum contrast ratio outlined in the guidelines. So depending on the situation, we either increase the text size, we change the colors, or we change the button size. While we were doing this, we're also keeping in mind the entire user base and the overall user experience. So you have the buttons here for an upcoming session, and they used to be, I believe, green and red. So there wasn't much difference between them as far as the hierarchy goes. But now they're both blue, just one is filled and one is outlined. So it's very clear that this is the main action on the page, and then cancel is a secondary action. There's also a different green being used, and you'll see that kind of like subtle shift all throughout the platform. Okay, so I'm going to pop back over to the application or I'm sorry, to the slides and go through kind of what we've done so far and what's still on the way. So up to this point, we have worked on just about all of our partners' login pages. Everyone has their own unique login page. So this was kind of a one-by-one effort. We adjust the primary navigation menu, our help widget, the home pages, the tutoring and advising pages, and currently the assignment review and tutor marketplace are being wrapped up, and the mental health module is just getting started. What's coming up after that is the tutor and advisor profile pages and scheduling and the calendar. Okay, so we have a couple new questions here. One is about the subjects offered, and they were asking if we support the GRE. Yes, we do. There's the verbal portion, the math portion, and I think the writing portion. So yes. Then we have, what is the best practice to share out this information to students and admin users? I'm not sure if we're referring to the subjects or to the accessibility. I'm going to assume accessibility since that's the section we're on now. We don't have any promotional materials around this at the moment. That is something that I can definitely talk to marketing about because I do think it's important to be aware of. A lot of work is going into this, so it'd be great to share out what's now available. I do have some links that I can make sure get included in the materials afterwards when you get your recordings and potentially links to some other things afterwards, like in the next couple of days. So I'll make a note to do that as well. Let me know if I didn't actually answer your question and you were really asking about subjects. Do I have before and after screenshots? Ooh, that is a good question. So I'm trying to think if we have any. We might. I think I can hunt some down for you. I will see if I can find some of the before. We would have taken some screenshots and put them in the Help Center articles and stuff like that. So yeah, I'll take a look for that. So with the screen reader, a lot of that, oh, sorry, I guess I should read the question out loud. The question is, how do you engage the screen reader? So this really depends on the device. There's also an option to add on a Chrome add-on that can act as a screen reader and read text out loud. but these are designed to naturally pick up on the way that the page is architected. So it will look for these things like the keyboard operability and where to focus next. And it will look for the hierarchy and organization on the page to communicate information cleanly and clearly. And then last question for GRE, what do they need to type in to get these tutors? Okay, so for the subject search, I'm assuming this is something that I can follow up with as well. If you type in GRE and you have that subject available in your course list, then it should pop up. But it could be that your school doesn't necessarily have that course listed. So that's something that you might want to follow up with your hero on, because they can definitely work with you on getting courses listed in that search. All right. Great questions, guys. Thank you. All right, here we are, the big exciting reveal. The tutor search is being reinvented as we speak. And the goal here is to improve successful scheduling of sessions. So this redesign was truly a collaborative effort. And this is where your feedback comes into play. I mentioned this at the very beginning, but in case you weren't in the webinar yet, if you have feedback, definitely share that with your hero. Even if you think somebody else might have already submitted it, we want to hear from you. We want to hear about your specific use cases and needs. So please share those ideas with us. But this is a great example of how that work comes to fruition, because we had a number of requests around the tutor search. We had requests for improved filtering. We had requests for more responsiveness, so it would work with more devices, requests for ease of use, and we had quite a few requests for the ability for students to find tutors based on their preferred language. So all of that is coming, and we definitely worked with our schools to get to a solution that would work. We conducted user interviews with administrators. And as the design was in progress, we also conducted several usability interviews with students. So that was extremely insightful. And we also sent out a couple admin surveys. So lots of collaboration around this. I'm very excited to share it with you. At a really high level, before I jump over into the application, you can expect a more flexible search. You can see a new UI for our filters. There's better performance. It's, from what I've seen so far, it's like a night and day. So I'm very excited about that. There are clear calls to action on the page, and we have our new language filter. So I'm going to switch over to our QA environment because the team is working on this as we speak. And this is not yet out in the real world. So I wanted to throw that disclaimer out there because you will see that some of the data might look a little weird, names might look a little weird. It's the functionality that's important. When you look at your own data, it will be fine. So I'm going to start here with our subject search. And I'm going to search for reading and composition. So one of the things to note about the search and the way it works now is it doesn't matter how that course was entered. If it was entered with the word and, or if it has an ampersand, it's now going to find both versions of those. The other thing that you might note is a lot of schools have their like course ID at the beginning, and that can be formatted differently depending on the school. So the students might not be aware of this, and they may, not include spaces, or they might skip punctuation, and that no longer matters. So you can see I'm just typing in ENGL 113, no space. I didn't put in the colon, and I'm still able to get the course that I need in my results. Now, this has always been the case, but students can just search for a keyword in their course, like reading, and they'll see all of the courses with reading in the title. All right, and here is the new tutor search page. So I don't know if you noticed because it was just so smooth, but this loaded very quickly. There has been a lot of work behind the scenes. This is using newer technology, and work has been done on the queries. Work has been done on the way the page loads. So the speed is kind of phenomenal. The way this works now is you can see I have 21 tutors in my search results. The search is set up to load 10 at a time. And then as I scroll, more will load. So this increases the speed, but you don't see it at all. You know, I'm scrolling through pretty quickly and it looks like they were there all the time. A couple clearer things happening on this page. As I hit the end of my search results, I have a very clear statement that no more search results are available. I also have a little arrow icon here that lets me quickly go back to the top. And then I mentioned this, but this is something that actually doesn't happen right now. You now can see how many tutors are in your search results. Some other things that are not really visible, but I think very important to be aware of, is that there is a much simpler prioritization logic being applied to the list of tutors. The previous version of the prioritization logic was very convoluted, and it was taking into account some things that just really didn't matter. It was also pretty much impossible to explain. So right now, this is a very simple version of prioritization, and we can iterate on this as we get feedback in here from you guys. But the way it'll work now is school tutors show up before Upswing tutors. And then within those buckets, immediately available tutors will show up before tutors with future availability. And then lastly, if you search and you haven't applied like a date filter or anything yet, it's going to show you tutors in the order of when they're next available. So you're never going to be in a situation where you have a tutor at the top of your list who isn't available for the next 3 weeks. So that is how the list is prioritized at this point. The next thing I wanted to look at is the tutor cards themselves. They are very simple and clean now. One of the things that was important to us is making it clear what the primary action is. On the previous version, there are it's actually been a little bit improved because of some of the accessibility changes, but all the buttons were, different colors and kind of the same weight. And so you get to this and every single card has like 4 or 5 buttons. So now it's streamlined so that there are only a couple buttons. And if you want to go view the full profile, you still can do that. You just click the link instead. For the tutors that are available immediately, the meet now is the primary action, with schedule being secondary. And for those who are available in the future, schedule is the primary action. So you can still take actions that you need to here, but it should be a lot more efficient and a lot easier for students to figure out what they need to do. All right. Something else that I wanted to point out about these cards is that they are extremely responsive. So I'm going to move my screen around. Hopefully this doesn't throw off the webinar too much, but I'm going to squeeze this in. And as I do, the menu just popped up to the top. The left nav is now at the top. And as I continue, the cards adapt. And now as I get narrower and narrower, it's set up perfectly for mobile use. So the items that were kind of spread out and moved over to the right are now stacked and centered. The primary action is the bottom one in the card because that's what your thumb would naturally go to. So this is just much improved as far as mobile responsiveness. All right, let's see if I can get this back to the size it was here. Okay, that's probably close. Okay, so the next thing that I want to talk about is the filters themselves. And I think to fully appreciate the updates to these filters, we have to look at what it looks like now. So these are our filters. Well, they will be very soon. And if we go to our current version, this is what our filters look like. They are disabled by default, and it's not very clear that you can interact with them. If you enable them, they do automatically filter by the date without the student selecting anything. So that's a little disorienting. And it's a pretty extensive form that they have to kind of digest and go through. One of the other things that you don't know until you use this on a mobile device is that your filters actually cover your results at a certain point. So if I squeeze this in, now we have the filters at the very top and your results are at the bottom. So you saw the mobile view in the new version. It's not like that at all. The tutor cards remain front and center. Okay, so that compare and contrast I think is really helpful because when, well, at least when I look at this, like this is a very recognizable pattern. This is kind of a no-brainer. Well, yeah, we would see filters, obviously available all the time, and we would see that they are selectable one by one. So we have all of our filters here. They can apply them, they can remove them, and I'm going to go through and just kind of one by one go through those. So first off, we have our date filter. You click on that, you get a little calendar just like you would expect. Some of the kind of, I think, more nuanced things happening here is if I continue moving forward and I get to October, you'll see that dates start to be grayed out. This is actually based on your school's designated limit for how far in advance a student can schedule a session. So they can't schedule it further out. And I'll head back over to our current month and select the 25th, Friday. Now, when I did that, super fast again, and just really loaded quickly, you barely notice the blip. And then you have 18 tutors instead of 21. So they can very clearly see that their results are narrowing. The criteria shows up here in the filter, so it's always very obvious what the filters are. And then as soon as you apply one, you have this button appear and it will continue to show the number of filters that you could clear if you clicked all of them. Okay, moving on, I will select time and I'm going to select 10:15. And that brings me 4 tutors. And then I'll move on to location. Now, location is pretty nice. This is actually a combination of 3 of the filters that you saw on our current version: format and location. So the students can choose if they want online or in person. And if they choose in person, then they'll be able to select the location based on the locations that you have in your instance. So you'll notice that some are enabled and some are disabled. These disabled ones are locations that exist, and some tutors for some subjects actually tutor at those locations. However, for reading and composition, there aren't any tutors at that location. There are only tutors at the Austin campus. So that's the only one I can select. It really tries to prevent any errors and trying to, keep students from getting to a point where they hit 0. It can still happen. So let me show you what that looks like. I'll go ahead and apply this location filter. You can see I'm down to 1 tutor, and then I can choose, do I want, a school tutor or an Upswing tutor? Now, if I pick this one, I have 0 results. So Took me a while to get there, but I definitely wanted to show this screen off because the way it's worded and set up is very clear to students about what's happening and what they can do to fix it. So you have instructions. Try changing your search criteria using the filters above, or you can clear all filters. And instead of having to go hunt down and find the filter or the clear all filters button, they could simply click clear all filters right here in the middle of the page. And there we are. I'm back to my original 21 tutors. Now I saved this for last because this is something that we've had quite a few asks about, and we're pretty proud of it. The tutors have always been able to apply the languages that they're fluent into their profiles, but students didn't have any visibility into that until they actually went into a tutor's profile. So I'll click on my profile here, and you can see that my fluent languages are English and French, but I had no idea about that beforehand. So now I can use the language filter to narrow this down to the language that I want to receive tutoring in. Similar to what we saw with location, you'll see all of the languages, but the only ones you can select are the ones that the tutors in your results actually speak. So English is going to show up for everyone, but you'll notice in this case, I also have French. As a student, I could go through and just use my down arrow and go straight to that option. Very easy. But if there are a lot of available languages, I can use the search as well. And that will let me select the language. And there's my French speaking tutor. So that actually probably isn't everything, but that's a lot. And I think I got to some of the biggest highlights for all of this work. And now the big question, which I see has already been asked in the Q&A, is when is this going to be released? When are we getting this fun stuff? The end of the month. So next week, we'll have this new tutor search in place. We're very excited about it. We will continue to work on this because there are some additional accessibility improvements we want to make. Minor things. So as an example, if I were to go back into that mobile view and I had a tutor with a very long name, their name would kind of leak off the card. So we would, we would fix that. We also don't have that nice skip to content button on this page. So that's something that we want to implement. And then as the semester progresses, we're going to be looking for and listening to feedback. So we plan to address feedback as well around this new page. Okay, so we have a question. How do you tutor English assignments in other languages? Well, I think that would be up to the tutor. So it's something that we talked a bit about as far as like subject areas and languages. And one of the things that came up was like, well, will there be confusion about the subject I want to get tutoring in versus the language that I want to receive tutoring in? And when we ran the usability tests with the students, none of them had any confusion. None of them had any problem figuring that out. So hopefully that won't be a concern. It'll be very obvious to them that they are picking the language they will receive tutoring in versus the subject that they would be getting tutoring in. I think what also helps in that regard is they start out searching for their subject on the other page. So that automatically is already set, and now they're just filtering. Okay, so the question is, what happens if you type two languages, English and French, and it pulls up multiple tutors? Is there a way it can distinguish those? That's a great question. It actually only will allow you to do one language at a time. So you would have to filter for French, and then you could filter for English. And then clarifying question on the previous one. So English grammar will be explained in French? Yes. All right. Ooh, we are getting close on time here. So let me pop back over to the slideshow and go to our last slide. What's ahead? So we are, like I said, still kind of working on this tutoring search. It'll be out very soon though. So we do have some other things on the horizon. For Q3, this work on the tutor search will continue. And as I mentioned, we will be continuing our work on accessibility as well. I ran through some of the areas we'll be covering, but just keep an eye out. You'll probably see subtle changes. And if there are significant changes, we will make sure that you're aware of those as well. Another thing that we are going to be focused on in Q3 is boosting overall system performance. We've heard from several of you about improving performance. So this is something we actually already started working on, but we're going to be continuing that work into Q3. It's a priority to make sure that our application's performance is top notch. Now, as we get into Q4, this is when we will potentially begin addressing some of that feedback we hear from you on the tutor search. We also are planning on improving the VLC performance and usability. And then lastly, we plan on updating our resource pages. This would be the Works Cited and Writing Lab. So this is everything that I have for you guys. I'm going to give one more stop here for questions. All right. Well, thank you everyone for participating. I appreciate the engagement, love the questions. I saw the emojis flashing, love that too. Do us a favor though, stick around for just a minute after the presentation ends. There's a very brief survey and we'd love to get your input on that. So basically it just helps us make sure we're sharing the right content with you, but I also have a couple questions about possibly participating in future user interviews and such. So yeah, definitely stick around for that. And thank you for everyone.